the Trevor Jackson Podcast.
Artemis II. Why now? What is Trump's agenda? Are we competing with China? You know, the news had broke that we was headed to Mars. And before I get into this video and react to this video with Neil deGrasse Tyson, I want to play a few clips. Real talk.
Good afternoon from the Space Coast of Florida, where 4 astronauts are about to suit up for NASA's boldest test flight in a generation.
Our goal is to pursue the secrets of the universe, to change the world in air and space.
We have a ton of people gathering around the world to watch this history-making moment.
This crew cohesion, we're at the point now where we are ready to go fly.
I've had shivers run up and down my spine a number of times.
This mission is an opportunity for our generation. It's about human history. It's the story of humanity.
The question isn't go or not go. It's are you going to lead or are you going to follow?
This crew could be the first humans to journey around the moon in more than half a century.
The Artemis II crew is go for launch. Full set.
Let's go.
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. And liftoff. The crew of Artemis II now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins.
Artemis and Artemis II remind us that our greatest chapters are yet to be written. Well done. Go Artemis II!
Point is the end game. The moon has now become the center, the focus of this mission.
Artemis II is the first step in a sustained presence off of planet Earth in deep space. And if we are successful in doing that, I think Artemis II becomes just that first little teeny tiny curb that we stepped up on this really long journey.
You know, it's a lot of individuals that don't believe. The key word is believe. Don't believe that space is real. They believe that the earth is flat. They believe a lot of things. And I want to know y'all perspective in the comment section below. What's y'all thoughts about us going back to Mars like 50 years later, 60 years later, something like that. I don't know the specifics, but what's y'all thoughts about that? What are we chasing? You know, it was a competition in the 60s, and it seems as if it's a competition now with the Trump administration. And why human beings can't unify, that's another thing that interests me when I think about this. Like, it's a power struggle. It's a power conversation. You know, we're fighting for power. We're fighting in Iran right now so we can take natural resources. We fought in Venezuela and took natural resources under the Trump administration. Now Trump is investing a percentage of the U.S. budget into NASA so we can go to Mars, so we can compete with China. What's really going on? Real talk, what's really going on? Now, to the belief conversation, you know, it was an executive. I was listening to his podcast and conversation. It was an executive at NASA talking about, you know, Mars. Was it a lie that we went there in the 60s? What's the reason that we're going back now in 2026? And he had this to say.
Said ignition earlier this week.
At a lot of the Trump rallies that I would go to, oftentimes I would get challenged by folks about the idea that we ever went to the moon. You know, this is out there that we never went. And one of the big questions from people that might believe it never happened was, okay, well, if we went decades ago, why haven't we been able to figure out how to get back?
it's a fair question. Let me just be like overwhelmingly clear. As the head of NASA, an astronaut, and a lifelong space enthusiast, yes, we absolutely went to the moon. I've spoken directly with the astronauts that have been on the moon, that have walked on the moon. I have a moon rock in my office that was picked up by Harrison Schmitt on Apollo 17, and I've spoken to him about it. And he still studies a lot of the samples that we have. In fact, if you went to the ignition event earlier this week, we put a bunch of our moon rocks that we picked up in the 1960s and early 1970s and put them on display. We absolutely did it, but it's a fair question. Why haven't we been back? Look, things changed, right? We had a great competitor then. I mean, this was another battleground in the Cold War. Which one of our, our political systems, our ideology was superior, and we used going to the moon and bringing it back as one of the proving grounds. Not to mention it was great for inspiring the next generation and everything we learned that benefited life here on Earth. But having a competitor didn't hurt that NASA's budget was about 4.5% of the discretionary budget at the time. It's about 0.25% now. But without a competitor and without the resources, our priorities changed. We started working with everybody, forming partnerships, trying to please everyone to some extent. I mean, NASA had a lot of externally imposed priorities on us that aren't necessarily aligned with doing world-changing things in air and space. And now it's changed. Now you have President Trump. You have a national space policy. You have the resources from the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Working Family Tax Cut Act. And we have a competitor. We have a very, very good competitor.
You know, that's interesting to hear him say that we have a competitor. Trump is investing in NASA through the One Big Beautiful Bill because he wanted to be able to put funds towards NASA so they could do these big things that they're doing right now. I'm a sci-fi buff when I watch movies. I'm a person that likes things that goes beyond adventure and things like that. I actually believe that they went to Mars. I would be one of those people that would go on that rocket and try to see outer space because it's something that very few people would ever experience. But my thoughts before we get into this video with Neil deGrasse Tyson so he can get us up to speed. Get us up to speed, Neil, on this topic of conversation and why Artemis II was created for us to go back to the moon. Let me turn the jazz down because it's a little loud. Is that my thoughts is why? Who's benefiting? Who's profiting? Is this dependent upon the evolution of technology? Because technology right now is the new drug. That's what people is addicted to, technology. So is this the reason why we're going back up to Mars? To obtain things, to create a safe space for permanent purposes for the United States? Let's get into this video, man. Real talk.
Chuck. Yes. We're going back to the moon.
I didn't know I've been in the first place.
NASA.
All right. NASA's going back to the moon.
Yes. Let's back up a little.
All right.
Okay. The first and only other time we went to the moon was the Apollo program.
Correct.
As you know, we went to the moon 9 times.
We faked it 9 times. Not even in my marriage has that much faking taken place.
Apollo 8.
Okay.
Went to the moon, orbited, and came back.
Okay.
Took that famous picture of Earthrise over the landscape.
That's right.
Apollo 10.
Okay.
Went to the moon, orbited the moon, deployed the lander, and then came back up.
Right.
So that's Apollo 10.
Right.
Apollo 11, everyone remembers, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, walk on the moon,
right.
And they leave Michael Collins up in the capsule.
Just left him up there. Didn't even give him the opportunity to go down later and check it out for himself. You know what
it's
I mean?
in the plan. These are professionals.
That is rough. Yeah, I mean, you're going to make me the chauffeur?
I gotta go to the moon.
You're going to make me the moon chauffeur. I didn't even get
the moon chauffeur.
I'm the moon chauffeur.
Then there's Apollo 12, Apollo 13, the ill-fated one.
Right.
Old Hollywood movie on that, directed by Ron Howard. And then Apollo 14, 15, 16, and 17. Okay. All right. Why did we go? We're Americans. We're explorers. It's in our DNA, is what we are told.
Right.
That's not why we went. That's not why we went.
No, why do we go?
You could want to go for those reasons, but that's not what makes everybody write a check.
Yeah, exactly.
Who writes the checks? Congress writes the checks.
Right.
You got to spook Congress somehow into writing the check. So Kennedy says,
we go to the moon and do this, that, and the other thing because it is hard.
So Yuri Gagarin comes out of orbit.
Okay. Right.
First man in space.
Yeah.
To orbit the Earth.
Right.
6 weeks later, we have a joint session of Congress. President Kennedy says stirring words, put a man on the moon, return him safely to Earth before the decade is out. Go earlier a couple of paragraphs in that same speech. If the events of recent weeks couldn't even utter the man's name.
Right.
The events of recent weeks are any indication of the impact of this adventure on the minds of men everywhere, then we need to show the world the path of freedom over the path of tyranny.
Voldemort is back. Dumbledore, I tell you, Voldemort is back.
The enemy is established.
Right.
The godless enemy is established.
Right.
The checks were written.
And yeah, well, there you go.
And they'd already beaten us with the first animal in space, Laika. They did already beat us at all of that. We needed something to beat them. So we said, let's go to the moon.
We're going to land on the moon.
And walk around. Even though they beat us in all these other categories.
Right.
And we did. So what happens? We get to the moon, look over our shoulder, no Ruskies. We're done here. So did we really go to explore?
No.
Or did we go to just beat the Russians?
Right.
We have not been back to the moon in 50 years. So you know how many scientists went to the moon?
0?
One. Do you know which mission?
No.
The last mission.
17.
So we had the astronauts do science experiments. It's not that no science happened.
No.
But don't fool yourself into thinking this was all for exploration.
Right.
It was muscle flexing on the geopolitical sphere during a Cold War when we're fighting a hot war in Southeast Asia against that enemy. We don't go back to the moon. Not in the 70s, not in the 80s, not in the 90s. Oh, wait a minute, in the 20-teens. Let's go back to the moon. What a great idea. We're long overdue. It's been half a century.
Yeah. I wonder how the moon's doing.
Okay. Why did we have these thoughts? Let's part the curtains. What else happened in the 20-teens? China says they want to put taikonauts on the moon.
Oh.
Taikonaut, their version of a cosmonaut, our version of an astronaut.
Right.
Oh my gosh. China's going to the moon. If there's ever a reason for Congress to reinvigorate the funding to go back to the moon, it was that.
Can't have
so
China.
we announced program to return to the moon.
That's all that I needed to hear, to be honest with y'all. I don't need to hear nothing else, because at the end of the day, it's a competition thing. It isn't a thing to benefit us. It's a thing to keep control, to keep power, and to keep influence over other nations. Wow. I'm going to continue to research this thing, continue to move forward in my thinking, and try my best to bring value to y'all. And I appreciate y'all tuning in to that subject and to that segment of the show.
The Trevor Jackson Podcast.